Napster and LimeWire may be long gone, but file sharing and torrenting sure are not. Every day, thousands and thousands are downloading and sharing music for free. Have we created a generation of thieves? And is there an opportunity to turn piracy into profit? Let's find out. Joining us now to help answer that, in Hong Kong via Skype, Gary Fung. He is the founder of IsoHunt. In Los Angeles, California, Nikki Fair, Director of Online Marketing Strategy with Network Music Group. In Austin, Texas, Chris Castle. He's attorney at Christian Castle Attorneys. In Nashville, Tennessee, Eddie Schwartz, President of the Songwriters Association of Canada. And back within our borders, in Vancouver, British Columbia, via Skype, Zoltan Sogas. He is manager and keyboardist with the band Lauren Mann and Fairly Odd Folk. And as we welcome everybody to the program tonight, we want to remind you that you, our delightful viewers, can be part of this conversation. Our producer, Greg Thurlbeck, and our online editor, Daniel Kitts, are hosting a Twitter chat right now on this topic, so please share your thoughts with us and use the hashtag AgendaTVO. Okay, everybody, this is going to be somewhat of a challenging discussion for a number of reasons. Number one, we have 5 guests in 3 different countries in 2 different hemispheres, and a host who frankly doesn't illegally download, or shall we say, download at all. This is a bit of foreign territory for me, so I'm going to look to all of you for a bit of an education on this. And Chris, I'll start with you because I think your career in this business goes back to when, do you go back as far as records? I know you go back as far as CDs. So let's try that.
Cylindrical disc.
So, no, you don't go back that far. I know you don't. Tell me, though, how, in your experience today, do you find people consuming music today?
Well, I think digital has pretty much saturated the market of the sort of pop music, frontline music releases. I think you'll probably see a product split, something along the lines of 60-40 CD and digital, and if it's really frontline, like current roster hit product releases, that's going to skew far more towards digital.
And Gary Fung, you're all the way on the other side of the world. How does it work out as far as you're concerned in terms of how people consume music in your view today?
Well, I think the statistics speak for itself when it comes to when iTunes overtook Walmart and becoming the world's largest retailer of music.
Okay, Zoltan, you're one of those more current artists. How do you find people consuming your music?
I guess we do most of our sales at shows, so we do sell a lot more physical copies. Also, I feel like the people that we're playing for are maybe a little more appreciative of a physical album sale because they know that it will, in the end, help us out a little bit more. We're also not across the globe, so most of the people that know us are seeing us at shows.
Eddie, of course, you represent the Songwriters Association of Canada, but you're in the country music capital of the world right now. Is there any difference, as far as you can tell, on how people who love country listen to music nowadays?
Well, I think country's a unique market, Steve, and I think Walmart still plays more of a role probably and Target in the country world than in other genres. One of the things that I think is very, very interesting, and Zoltan just touched on it, is the kind of resurgence of vinyl. And in particular in Nashville, there's a lot of alt genres of music going on here now, and vinyl is definitely becoming more and more popular across multi-generation in terms of usage of music these days.
Gotcha. I want to read something here that Dave Allen, the founding member of the British band Gang of Four, wrote, and then find out what you folks think about this. Dave wrote, "Musicians are now in the T-shirt, Kickstarter, Bandcamp, Spotify, Twitter, Facebook business. In the end, it's not the big tech companies or the conglomerates driving this, it's the users who tell us what they want." Okay, Zoltan, start us off on that. Are you in all of those different businesses that Dave just mentioned in that article?
Most of them, and I joke with people at shows too that we're not musicians, we're retail sales associates trying to sell people T-shirts and whatnot at our merch table after shows. So I definitely can understand what that quote's getting at.
Now, you're saying that a bit tongue-in-cheek, but a bit seriously as well, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, we are musicians, and that's first and foremost. But at the end of the day, if we're not selling products, if we're not connecting with people on Facebook and Twitter, if Lauren's not on there every day tweeting about shows and what's coming up and what we're doing, then people just have the potential of losing interest. So you've really got to keep the interest of everybody these days, with everything just being so instant and just kind of disappearing in a second if you're not keeping them entertained.
Eddie, how much of a difference would that represent, that list of things that an artist is now expected to do today? How big a difference would that represent from, say, the way things were 20 years ago?
Well, it's a huge difference, Steve. I mean, obviously, if you're spending a huge chunk of your time interacting with your fan base through all of the social networking sites available, you have a lot less time to work on the art and craft of your music. So I think it's problematic from that standpoint. But there's other concerns that I have, and I sort of don't agree with the quote. I think that those services are controlled by people who have a lot of money, put a lot of money into businesses and are monetizing music and are doing very well financially for monetizing music. And the problem from my perspective, and the reason that young bands have to spend so much time marketing their work is that most of the financial resources are going to the people who are developing those services. So you're in a situation where, for example, Spotify, one of the services you mentioned, was valued last week as a $4 billion company. Unfortunately, for those of us who make music, 1 million streams on Spotify will deliver to the songwriter about $35. So, when you have so little, when the people who make the music are not participating in this enormous value chain that their work has created, it does put tremendous pressure on the creators to try to find some other way to market their work and to make a few bucks. So music is being monetized by these services, but very little of that money is making its way into the hands of the people who actually make the music.
Okay, you've raised a bunch of interesting questions there, which I want to pick up on. Nikki, let me go to you first on that. The suggestion here that if you're spending, as an artist, so much more of your time liaising with fans on social networking sites, in the T-shirt business, in the Facebook business, etc., that there is the potential for your music to suffer as a result because you don't get the time to practice, do concerts, etc. What do you think of that argument?
I do think that's a valid argument. I mean, my job is online marketing, but that being said, we really take each artist into consideration and what they're willing to do. Some artists are really comfortable and want to be on social media and want to connect with their fans every day on a daily basis. Some want nothing to do with it, and when they don't, we don't force them into that. We look at other alternatives and other platforms and ways we can promote them ourselves without having to have them, pull them into that daily involvement and away from their art.
Zoltan, do you feel pressure to sort of be there, available to the fans all the time on social media?
I sometimes feel a pressure for Lauren since she's the songwriter and she needs to have that time for that to happen. When we're on tour, she's busy setting up, playing the shows, talking to people after, and then when we're in the van, she's got emails and stuff to do, trying to keep up on Twitter. So I feel that pressure for her because I can't do it all myself, so I need her help. But I'd rather her just focus on the music. And so it is a little difficult to try and find time for everything when you're an independent artist and you don't have anybody else working with you on that.
Chris, how about in your experience?
I've always said that if artists wanted to be distributors, they would have been distributors and not artists. I think Nikki has the right point, which is that some people like it. Some people like it more than they should, and probably you have to go through each artist and find out what they're comfortable with. There's also a real question in my mind as to whether any of this really makes that much difference at the end of the day in terms of the tweeting. And you want to have information out there about your record. You want fans to be able to feel like they can communicate with you. But whether that means having to be on Twitter all the time and or Facebook all the time, to me is still an open question.
Eddie, you pointed out that Spotify service makes a fortune potentially for those who invented it, but the artists aren't seeing very much of the money down the road. And then, of course, illegal downloading. We've all heard about how artists are suffering as a result of this. So tell me, how much money do you think artists are foregoing because people are illegally downloading their music and therefore not returning anything to the artist in that direct purchase?
Well, that's a very good question. The problem, I guess, is that some of the legitimate services, the Spotifys and the Pandoras and others out there, which are great services, by the way. I mean, this is not I'm not a technophobe. I don't hate technology. But the revenue stream, for example, I'll just give you an example. When I was starting out, if you sold 1 million records, you got a platinum record on your wall, and you, as a writer, for a single, for example, you'd get a check for about $45,000. So if that 1 million streams now equals $35, that's about as close to a 100% drop in revenue to the music creator as I think you can imagine. And file sharing, I think we haven't mentioned that, but that still is a big part of what's going on out there. A lot of people are getting it for free. I guess the problem from my standpoint as a music creator, and I think this is the problem for the next generation, is if the legitimate services and the illegitimate services are paying almost the same. In other words, between $35 and zero is only $35. So it's really, where do you go? There really are very few services that are monetized, properly monetizing the creator's work. But the key point is that in some of the legitimate services, the shareholders, the venture capitalists, the CEOs are doing very nicely.
Gary, in your opinion, is it fair or accurate to look at every shared file or every so-called illegally downloaded file as somehow lost revenue to the original artist? Is that a fair conclusion to come to?
No, that's not a fair assessment at all. And I think the one download equal one lost sale has always been thrown around by a lot of people. And I think it's simply not accurate, because we all know that when you download a copy, you're making another copy. You're not taking away someone else's copy. And just the economics of that very fact is completely different from the road that we come from. When it comes to one CD equals one CD. Once you land it to someone else, the original person no longer has a CD. And I think we have to face that new reality. And I think when it comes down to streaming, for example, or the whole notion of only $35 made over 1 million plays online, I think that is the new reality when it comes to what people are willing to pay. And I think the problem is that we have to get people to actually want to pay and have that emotional connection with fans that artists need to build online. And I do think that people have lost sight of that over the years, regardless of technology.
Let's hear from others on this as well. Nikki Fair, can you weigh in on this issue as well?
I tend to agree. I don't think that, having somebody download something on a torrent site is necessarily taking away from that sale. And in fact, we use Music Metric as our analytics system. We really see when there's a lot of BitTorrent activity in a certain market, our sales activity is also really high.
Okay, so Nikki, I'm jumping in here for a second. Hang on a sec, because you just said something that I know is English for all of you folks, but may not be English for me and others who don't know what torrenting sites are. And what was that other expression you used here? Hang on a sec. Torrenting bundles. Anyway, help me out here. What's a torrenting site?
It's a site where people can share files for download in the most basic terms.
Give me some of the bigger names out there in torrenting sites that I might have heard of.
This is a separate conversation, but BitTorrent now has a bundles program, and there's artists like Madonna, Moby, Plain White Tees all have offerings on there right now. But that's a separate offering. That's, what I'm talking about BitTorrent Basic is somebody's going to a website and downloading a file for free. What we found is we don't think it's necessarily taking away from our sales. In fact, in cities where we're showing a lot of torrent activity, the sales are also higher in those areas.
Okay.
So, whether that is just, discovery, maybe fans that would never have looked at that band before, checking out that band, discovering them, and then going to iTunes or another digital retailer to purchase an album.
Purchasing at that point, yeah. Chris, let me hear from you on this.
Well, first of all, I'd like to just point out that most of these sites that use the BitTorrent technology as opposed to BitTorrent, the company, which has certain legitimate offerings, but the BitTorrent technology for unauthorized downloading. These sites often are thought of as places where consumers can go to get something for free, right? But they're not. They're actually advertising supported in the vast majority of cases. And the brands that you see advertising on these sites are often the same brands that Spotify and Pandora and some of the brand or advertising supported services are also going after to buy advertising on their sites. So when you say something's free or it's not a lost sale, if you think of these sites as being advertising supported, which they are, like Pirate Bay, Kick-Ass Torrents, MP3 Skull, there's a whole bunch of these sites that are illegal. These sites get a lot of advertising traffic, a lot of advertising sales. Granted, it's at the low end of the totem pole in terms of pricing on the remnant advertising prices, and sort of forwarded ads and things like this. But there are no lost sales, right? I mean, all sales are monetized. They're just not monetized by the artist. They're monetized by the pirate site.
Well,
so
I
yes,
want to find out if Zoltan has a problem with that, though.
I had not really ever thought of it that way. I mean, I'm not in advertising, so until the producer of your show had mentioned, about Google, people searching for torrents and all the ads on the side, Google's making money from that. I honestly hadn't really thought of it that way. To be fair, I do think that some people would be downloading from these sites to hear a record and then decide whether or not they want to get it from there. And also, at the same time, I think some people just download it for free so they don't have to pay for it. One thing I've noticed is it's very hard to figure out where to listen to music now. Some artists I don't know, are they on Bandcamp? Are they on SoundCloud? Have they put their whole album on YouTube? Is somebody streaming it on another website? So I think it's just really easy for some people just to go on a torrent site because they know any, release from any artist that is, half decently known will be on there.
Okay, I get that, Zoltan, but in the case of somebody, say, illegally downloading, let's say, your music, or sharing it for free with somebody else, do you feel when that transaction takes place like somebody's taking bread off your table?
It depends. If they never had any intention of purchasing the music, then no. If they just download it and listen to it once and they don't like it, then it's, not really legitimate. I'd like to see sales for every time somebody gets our record, but at the same time, I know that that's unrealistic. I did go through and have all of the illegal downloads of our album removed by sending these different companies takedown requests, and it worked. And that way we could control, I guess at the end of the day, I just want to control. If we want to release our music for free, I want people to get it from us so I can at least get their email address or get something back from them. Okay,
let me get you to address, and Nikki, I'll start with you on this because this is, I think, an artist of yours named MC Lars. We're going to take a look from a video clip of MC Lars, and then we'll come back and chat about this other brewing legal dispute with the Recording Industry of America Association. So let's roll that tape now.
Music was a product, now it is a service. Major record labels, why are you trying to hurt us? Fix up in my face like, don't steal our songs, Lars. Well, Sony sells the burners that are burning CDRs. So Warner, EMI, hear me clearly. Universal Music, update your circuitry. They sue little kids downloading hit songs. They think that makes sense when they know that it's wrong. Hey, Mr. Record Man, the joke's on you. Running your label like it was 1992. Hey, Mr. Record Man, your system can't compete. It's the new artist model, file transfer.
In doing some research on this, I've learned that MC Lars was a network artist, and the track we just heard, that little excerpt we just played, prompted a 15-year-old girl from Texas to get in touch with MC Lars. And perhaps you could pick up the story there and tell us what happened next.
I'm actually, Steve, I'm not very versed on this story. It was 8 years ago. I came into the company fold about 2 years ago. So the basics and what I know is that, the RIAA, you wanted to take action against the 15-year-old girl in Texas, the downloader, and, Network offered to pay her legal fees, and I think it went away before it got any further than that.
Well, you've hit the highlights of what I wanted to get at there. And you offered to pay her legal fees. Why?
Because we just didn't like the idea of fans getting sued. Just wanting to discover music.
Okay, here's the CEO of Network, a guy named Terry McBride, said litigation is a deterrent to creativity and passion and is hurting the business I love. So that's where he stands on this, and I guess the question emerging from that is, do you guys favor what everybody calls illegal downloading?
No, that was 8 years ago. We certainly don't, we're not issuing takedowns from these torrent sites at all, but we are pushing our fans and consumers and having our artists support outlets where fans can get the music, whether it's iTunes, whether it's YouTube or Spotify or Pandora. Those are the services that we, direct fans to, but we're not taking down files at torrent sites.
Okay. Zoltan, does it feel to you as if because of the technological capacity teenagers now have, I guess they're the ones doing this the most, we're sort of creating a generation of music thieves here? Does it feel that way to you?
I don't necessarily think so. I think perhaps we're so far into a generation of having music available for free. It's been at least a decade that way. So people who are 15 now were 5 when this started. I think they just maybe don't really think about it. I think that potentially they don't, like the thought process, it's not the same as going into a store and thinking, I'm going to go steal this chocolate bar. People know that that's stealing. I think that perhaps if we're specifically talking about teenagers, it's just like, that's what you do. You want to get a new record, you want to listen to it, that's what you do. I mean, on the same hand, there are other teenagers that just buy everything on iTunes and wait for people to give them gift cards or whatever. So I don't think, inherently we're creating thieves. I think perhaps inherently we are creating a generation of people that have an expectation that music should be free.
Chris, how about you? Do you think we've created a generation of thieves?
I would say we've created a generation of artists that don't have an expectation of getting paid much for their recordings. I think that we definitely have done. I think there's a definite perception on the part of fans that they shouldn't have to pay for the recordings because they're available for free, and yet they choose many times to purchase recordings because you see iTunes and some of these for sale services that actually sell a lot of tracks and make a lot of money. So I think on the one hand, you've got artists that are not really coming to it with the same expectation they would have had even 5 years ago or 10 years ago, thinking that what they want to do is they want to use the internet to get popular, and then they'll turn around and do a deal with Vitamin Water or something of that nature and get sponsorship money or get their money some other way. I have a problem with that because it just like the advertising on the pirate sites, you have this overall corporatization of the music business, which is way beyond. I always find it funny when people think that they're sticking it to the man. David Lowery actually had a great line about this: is that this is the first generation that thinks they're sticking it to the man, but actually are sticking it to the hippie freak musician, right? And this is really the issue for me. Is like the artists. There was a time when artists used to think that they could make their living forever, basically, for their life, if they're successful with their recordings, and that will lead to touring. But eventually, there will be sort of the pension fund, if you will, of the records that they continue to sell when they hit retirement age. Now you see people like Levon Helm, for example, who died on the bandstand because he wasn't making any money from his records, and he had to tour in order to pay his hospital bills to cover his cancer illness, right? So I think it's a much more complicated question to me than whether we're creating a generation of thieves.
I appreciate that, but Gary, now that we've got you back from Hong Kong, I do want to put the question to you because some people, I gather, think that what you do helps create a generation of thieves, people who feel they're entitled to take music for nothing. What do you think?
I think others have already touched on the fact that I think people are the new generation is more and more taking for granted that things are for free, like streaming available online on YouTube, everything is free. And I think that it is a social change and not so much about thieves or simply that like Derek and Tim Bryce said, that it's simply not good business to sue your own fans. And the changing times is such that people take for granted things being available for free online. And I don't think that for the industry as a whole, for the music industry, that money is truly being lost. Because I think as long as people has an emotional connection with the artists, they would find a different way of paying. And I think we are always seeing that with merchandising, with concerts, like more and more money is being moved to elsewhere instead of record sales.
I'm tempted to ask our director, Sheldon Osmond here, can you put a 5-shot up, Sheldon? Are you able to do that? There we go. Okay. Can I ask all 5 of you at once, raise your hand if you have any illegally downloaded music on your iPods. Hands up. Okay, 2. Really? Just 2 of you? Nikki, you got nothing?
I get music through my industry all the time.
So you don't need, okay. Chris, how about you?
Peers.
Nothing illegal on your iPod?
Nope. And I started out representing Napster, in this, but I never downloaded, I never actually used Napster.
Interesting. Gary, how about you?
It's hard to believe, but it's true.
It is hard to believe. Gary?
I'm not at the liberty to stay.
Okay. Zoltan, you put your hand up there. Does it feel somewhat hypocritical to be kind of upset about the fact that people may be stealing your music when you may be doing it of others?
I'm not necessarily upset about it, but when I had mentioned, for me, if I want to hear an album when it comes out, if it's somebody that I really like, we're usually on tour, so I don't want to pay for something digital. That's just something for me personally. I would rather go buy the vinyl and get the download card. That's not always feasible. Buying vinyl and touring with that. So generally what I'll do is I'll just get the digital version somewhere, and then when we get home, I'll purchase records that I'd like to continue to listen to.
Gotcha. Eddie, is it a case that if you so-called illegally download this stuff, you don't feel as if you actually own it, because you can't hold it in your hand in the way that you could a record album, for example? Does that give you kind of cover on the whole thing?
I don't know if it's that, Stephen. I think I certainly don't feel that way. I mean, I should add that most of what I've downloaded illegally are my own songs that somehow I misplaced my copies of them years ago. So my apologies to my publisher and the record label. But I also want to say, to Zoltan's point, having worked with a lot of young bands and continue to work with a lot of young bands, they're the last people on earth who can afford to go buy music because no one's buying their music, so they don't have any money. So a bit of a downward spiral there. But I don't know. I don't think it's ownership. I think, to come back to what Chris said earlier, I think people think they're cheating the man. I think that the irony is that, Google, which is now more than $1,000 a share, clearly not, doing quite nicely again in terms of monetizing other people's work, there's a lot of mythology surrounding this whole thing about cheating the man. And I think, by the way, I think the man himself, and maybe it's the labels and the powers that be in the music industry, have fed that myth by using words like piracy. I think piracy was a terrible choice in terms of a narrative here. And I think a lot of where we are today, with all due respect to my friends and colleagues in the music business, a lot of it has to do with self-inflicted wounds. I think you really don't want to alienate your core audience. And I think that's unfortunately what the policies of the major labels in particular over the last 10 or 12 years have done.
So by using the word piracy, you feel they, in some respects, demonize the people that they are actually trying to appeal to?
Well, I think they romanticize it. I mean, piracy, come on.
Right.
You're talking mostly about teenage kids. Piracy sounds, think about all the Johnny Depp movies that we've had in the last 10 years that have done very nicely on piracy. So I think they've romanticized it to some extent and almost given the kids a free pass to do it. Just, if I may just say this, we have some market research. The Songwriters Association of Canada, working with a third-party research company, has, I think, some convincing research that most people would like to pay for music, and especially if they know, and I think this is the key point, if the people who make the music will actually get the money.
Well, let me pick up on this actually with Zoltan. This is a good point. I want to pick up on Zoltan with it. Zoltan, you're going to have to educate me again for a second here, because there's a new thing that I'm not familiar with, and you're going to tell me what it is. Noise trade. What is that?
Noise Trade's a website that probably started, I think, perhaps 6 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. It was started by a fellow in Nashville named Derek Webb. And it's gone through many phases. I've known about it, I think, since pretty early on. Basically, the mantra has always been to get a free download legally, but do some sort of publicity for the band to help them expand their fan base. So
you've done this, right, with Noise Trade?
Pardon me?
You have done this with Noise Trade in your latest album?
Yes, we have. Yeah.
Okay.
Originally with Noise Trade, if you downloaded something, you had to enter 5 email addresses of friends or other people so that they would get a link for it as well. That could become kind of annoying when you start getting a dozen of those a day. So now simply you just enter your email address and your postal code or zip code, and you get a link to download the album for free. You have the option of tipping if you'd like, but basically as an artist, we end up getting everyone's email address. So then we can include them on email updates, let them know about tours, new album recordings, funding campaigns with Indiegogo, etc.
Okay, let me follow up on the tips, because this sounds a bit like the restaurant business here. If you like the service, you can offer a tip. And I guess that's getting money directly into the hands of the artists, which is what a lot of people want to do. How's the tipping going?
I mean, if you look at it like price per unit, it's awful. If you look at it in terms of it's mostly covered the advertising that we've done on the website, then that's great. We can kind of look at it as in 10 years ago, we might have pressed, say, 500 demo or 500 giveaway CDs and gone to some sort of event and handed out CDs like that. It's kind of the digital version of that, I guess.
Okay, Nikki, are you working with Noise Trade?
Yes, we are.
What are you guys doing with them?
We have some of our management clients, like, some of the, quote, bigger bands like Fun and Dispatch have had offerings on Noise Trade. And then on the label side, we use Noise Trade as, a discovery platform for a lot of our artists. So it's been a great resource for us. And the emails that we get, we've noticed they're, for lack of a better term, very sticky. So when we get those email addresses and then those artists go to email that group about upcoming tours or merch or what have you, the unsubscribe rate is very low. The people are interested and they're engaged because they got something from the artist, and they seem to be liking the artist across the board.
And do they tip?
They tip on everything, but it depends. If you're offering samplers, just a few songs, you don't get as much money from those. If you're offering a full album download like Dispatch did, then yeah, you can see some good money.
Eddie, what do you think about the idea of tipping?
Well, I mean, can you imagine any other profession? I certainly even waiters and waitresses actually get paid a salary and tippings on top of it. So, I think it's kind of sad. I mean, we're at a point where something that used to have value and still has value, and again is creating value for all kinds of other people in an enormous value chain, that the people who actually make the music have to rely on tips. I think that's a pretty sad statement. And I think it also undermines other places where people are still getting paid. In other words, if you'll work just for tips in this one particular use, then why should film and TV pay for music? Why should radio pay for music? So I think it kind of undermines the entire system that we have built over many years that does compensate music creators.
Okay, I'm just going to check with the control room because I think we're losing our satellites in a few minutes here. Is that right, gang? 3 minutes till we lose satellites? Okay, so let me start with Nikki and then to Chris on this last question here. Do you think it's tougher to make a living as a musician today than it was before music went digital? Nikki, what do you think?
Yes. I mean, as we discussed in the opening statements, a lot of artists do feel compelled to stretch themselves thin and to be in a lot of places. And because of people's short attention spans now and because of the internet, you really do feel like you have to be everywhere so that fans hit you where they are. I mean, essentially, sometimes people are just lazy. So unless you're getting music in front of them at every opportunity you can, it's really hard, for musicians to really get the word out. And there's a lot more competition too, because of all of the sites that have all of these great musics. There's more opportunity for discovery, but there's also a lot bigger pot of people too. I mean, before you just went to the radio and you could listen to the radio station and you just hear the top artists that the radio's playing, and that was kind of limited your discovery experience right there. Now it's infinite.
Everything seemed a lot simpler when there was one top 40 radio station in town. It was AM, and that was all you had. But that's I sound like an old fuddy-duddy talking about the good old days in that respect. Chris, what about you? Harder than ever for artists to make a living?
I think what you find is that it's somewhat easier for bands who are independent to get in a place where they can communicate with fans. But God forbid they should be successful, because as soon as they're successful, then the torrent sites start ripping them off, right? So it's kind of a tough a cycle that people are in. And touring, is still basically a young person's game. You can't tour forever. And regardless of how much information you get back from these from services like Pandora that offer this kind of heat map for some of their artists, you find out that you're popular in, Yellowknife, Vancouver, Edmonton, and New Brunswick, and so route that tour. That doesn't really help you that much, right? So as you start losing control, as you start losing the ability to target your marketing and target your advertising geographically, touring becomes more difficult. Not to say you can't accomplish anything, not to say that you can't use these tools. You should use these tools, but they do have limitations, and I think that it is much more difficult now.
More difficult. I love the fact, though, Chris. I love the fact. You can't tour forever, but I love the fact Tony Bennett's 85 and he's still out there touring. You got to love that. Gary, Nikki, Zoltan, Chris, and Eddie, thanks so much for joining us on TVO tonight, and thanks for educating your host on something he's not completely copacetic on, but understands a lot better now. Appreciate it, everybody.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.